and dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. We're going to kind of just go ahead and dive into some of the recent news. One that's come out is what has been basically exposed by Seymour Hersh. I have one here out of Infowars.com. Bin Laden raid exposed may spark legal woes for Fed. White House deflects on major scandal. Igniting extensive controversy. Already investigative reporter Seymour Hersh's article disputing the official count of the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound might land in the dockets of federal and military appeals court. Courthouse News has learned. In a phone interview, a New York attorney for a now deceased embassy bombing suspect revealed that his client disputed the authenticity of bin Laden messages that Hersh's report alleges to be fabrications in a motion currently under seal in a federal court. A Pakistani Brooklynite who was recently convicted for supporting Al-Qaeda also fought the admission of the bin Laden evidence before an FBI agent used it against him at trial. His appeal counsel added. The lawyer for WikiLeaks source, Chelsea Manning, also commented that her team is considering what significance the report holds for her client's appeal. And that's all. I got the article from Infowars, but it's Courthouse News, and you can read the rest of it there at Courthouse News. I'm going to play a clip here from Christopher Green, AMTV, and his take on the Seymour Hersh exposing the Osama bin Laden giant White House conspiracy. So let's go ahead and cue that up here.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. Pulitzer Prize winner Seymour Hersh, I believe he won it in 1970. He's won numerous other awards. He's a 5-time Polk Award winner for broadcast journalism. He also won the George Orwell Award in 2004. Basically called out Obama and his entire administration this week. Essentially calling Obama, the President of the United States, a total piece of shit. Basically calling his entire administration a lie. Pointing a finger at, and this is a guy, again, that's uncovered things like the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, He's famous for that. One of the reasons he won the Pulitzer Prize. Has also done exposés and unearthed cover-ups at Abu Ghraib prison when George W. Bush was president of the United States. U.S. torture, again, exposing the corruption at the tippy top of Washington, D.C. Came out this week and basically said the entire Osama bin Laden raid was basically a giant White House conspiracy. So the piece of shit that makes up the president of the United States could boost his poll ratings. He basically suggests through evidence and his source, his anonymous source, which people criticize him for using anonymous sources, even though if they were public sources, they'd probably be publicly assassinated by the piece of shit that makes up Obama and his administration, basically came out and said that entire Osama bin Laden raid, you know, where allegedly Osama bin Laden was in a firefight and hid behind a woman before the SEAL team came in heroically and pumped, 10 bullets into his skull. And then instead of giving us any real hardcore evidence, anything like that, they just kind of kicked his body off a U.S. warship, gave it the proper Muslim burial, even though that makes no sense. Basically suggests that none of that really happened. Yeah, they still probably kicked his body, at least that's what they say. That's the official narrative off the U.S. warship, but basically he describes, as does his source. Again, this a very legit guy, won the Pulitzer Prize, for God's sakes, won the Polk Award 5 times, the George Orwell Award in 2004, basically described Osama bin Laden like he was an invalid. He wasn't engaged in a firefight. He was actually being held in Pakistan by Pakistani intelligence that profited in the sum of about $25 million, leaking this information to the U.S. government so Obama could use it, even though they were tossing around the idea that they might do a drone strike or something like that, then sell that as a big propaganda campaign to the American public. It's basically was just a giant puff piece for Obama, a outright premeditated murder of an invalid who Osama bin Laden might as well have just been in a walker or something like that, being held against his will by Pakistani intelligence and intelligence agencies around the world. So that entire story, you remember the people in the streets like, yeah, we got Osama bin Laden, he's dead. Yeah, Team America, F yeah. That was based on total misconception, total lies, and total propaganda. And again, Seymour Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize winner, has exposed the George W. Bush administration. He's exposed the right. He's exposed the left. He's very famous for unearthing really these tragedies, like the My Lai massacre that took place in Vietnam, of which, again, he won the Pulitzer Prize. So this just only adds more proof to the pudding. But what's so damning about it is this guy's credibility. I mean, the White House is looking at this and his PR team, Obama's team, going, oh, shit, Seymour Hersh he told the truth, threw Obama under the bus. What are we going to do? Thus far, the White House has denied it, which only tells me again that it is true. Part of me even questions if Seymour Hersh is getting all the facts correctly. I mean, honestly, Osama bin Laden might as well be the Easter Bunny. I mean, we know he was trained by the CIA. We know that Al-Qaeda was trained and created by Al-Qaeda. By the CIA. This is all undocumented, declassified information, folks. We know that Osama bin Laden, for example, was fighting with the U.S. assets and intelligence against the Russians in the first war in Afghanistan, only so that we could turn against them and use it as a giant public PR propaganda campaign. Kind of like ISIS. Notice after Obama allegedly assassinated Osama bin Laden, there was a new boogeyman created in the name of ISIS, in the name of ISIL, in the war on terror that was, again, a part of George W. Bush's administration and has quickly transitioned just in a new format, Al-Qaeda to ISIS, Al-Qaeda to ISIL as the new fear campaign. You see, the United States of America has to keep the American people in a constant state of fear. Without fear, there's no real adequate implementation of the police state and the surveillance state that makes up America today. It's tough to justify illegal wiretapping and surveilling of you and your family's phone records, as you just kind of go about your daily business and engage with your family and friends, or maybe make love to your wife as you're being spied on by your cell phone, illegally, anti-constitutionally, by Obama. But what's great about this unearthing, what's great about this release, what's great about this story is Seymour Hersh only confirms what Americans already knew. And that's that Obama and his entire administration, and the White House specifically, is a total piece of shit. Obama, a total lying sack of shit. A total scumbag. Again, all of this bullshit and all of it propaganda We can go back to other stories like Pat Tillman that Obama wasn't a part of, but the White House at the time was, selling us the lie that Pat Tillman, American hero, NFL superstar from our state, playing for the Arizona Cardinals here in Arizona locally, was gunned down by Al-Qaeda and using that as a propaganda pitch for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, only to find out that was total bullshit, that was a total lie, that he was gunned down by our own troops, by our own U.S. government, our own military. Again, all of this now public knowledge and in the public sphere. You see, the goal with this, folks, is to keep you in a perpetual state of fear. If it's not Al-Qaeda as the boogeyman, if it's not Osama bin Laden as the boogeyman, the Easter Bunny, or Santa Claus, it's ISIL, or it's ISIS, or it's these stories, if you draw a cartoon of Muhammad, you'll be murdered in broad daylight. Not to say that those things don't happen, that there's not legitimate terror, but the White House and the U.S. government is using it to their advantage. They're coming up right out of their ass, quite literally, as Seymour Hersh suggests, pulling a rabbit out of his hat to increase the poll numbers, to get you behind Obama at the White House, even though they really just premeditated murdered Osama bin Laden, allegedly, if the guy even existed, who was being held in Pakistan, of which they rewarded allegedly $25 million being held by Pakistani intelligence. An invalid who wasn't playing Xbox and banging Pakistani hookers at the time, who was probably walking around in a walker being held against his will in whips and chains, only so we could hear the bullshit story of U.S. forces and the SEAL team coming in and just pop, 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 pop straight to his head. You know, if Seymour Hersh wasn't close to, I believe, 80, he probably wouldn't even come out with this story. I mean, he's probably on Obama's kill list. Again, another declassified fact. Obama has a kill list. I mean, when he's not murdering U.S. citizens like Anwar al-Awlaki without trial, judge, or jury, he's pulling this bullshit out of his ass, a rabbit out of his hat, in regards to these stories and propaganda campaigns around the murder and public assassination of figures like Osama bin Laden. Again, I'm not even convinced Seymour Hersh has the whole story. I mean, at the very least, what Seymour Hersh is telling us is the truth. At the worst, it's a far greater conspiracy. I mean, maybe Osama bin Laden, honestly, was just totally an illusion. Totally the Easter Bunny. Totally Santa Claus. Didn't even exist. Maybe it was just CGI animation putting them together, kind of like ISIS in these beheadings, which are better and more highly produced than some of the videos you see in a professional studio here at AMTV. So, more proof to the pudding, folks. More damning evidence to damn this president, to expose him for the scumbag that he really is, the piece of shit that he really is. And we have Seymour Hersh to thank for it. So thank you, Seymour Hersh. Thank you, Pulitzer Prize winner. Thank you, 5-time Polk Award winner. Thank you for your excellence in broadcast journalism and journalism. Thank you for your George Orwell Award in 2004. Again, this guy very high up on the credibility scale, which must have Washington, D.C. And the political whores that make up our elite today that don't represent us, but represent themselves, corporate interests and lobbyists, very, very concerned. I'm Christopher Green. Get this video out everywhere, make it viral, hard-hitting it in your face, and click the link below to support our sponsor.
Okay, Christopher Green, AMTV, and that's his take on it. And, you know, it is pretty, surprising that Seymour Hersh would come out with this, and I think it probably does have to do with his, age. But you can read more up on it. There's articles. Courthouse News was the one that InfoWars reposted. But we all basically knew there was something up. And definitely when they came out and said, oh, we dumped his body overboard at sea. That's following tradition. And everybody's like, no. What do you mean by that? So we kind of understood there was something wrong. Okay, let's go ahead and move on here. maybe. I don't know if you guys seen this one, but I got this out of Mashable.com. Elon Musk fears Google CEO Larry Page could accidentally create a robot army to destroy humanity. And you know, we've been pretty critical of Google, and I think for good reasons. They are basically out of control corporation with in a way almost a monopoly, or definitely a great collection to be able to use this type of technology in a bad way. And then you look at their acquisition of Boston Dynamics, and that, you know, contractual relationship with the government and the Pentagon, and their AI, and you know, their robotics. Many people, I think, have kind of this fear of Google and their capabilities, and I'm pretty sure many people have heard those expressed here on this network before, not only from me but from others. But it says here, Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla Motors Inc., unveils the company's newest products, Powerwall and the Power Pack, in Hawthorne, California. Elon Musk's relationship with Google co-founder Larry Page is complicated, to say the least. On the one hand, the two influential tech CEOs are close friends and business associates. On the other hand, Musk is genuinely worried that Page might just lead to the destruction of humanity as we know it. I'm really worried about this, Musk is quoted as saying in Elon Musk's new authorized biography of the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. This, according to the book, refers to the possibility that Page would develop artificial intelligent robots that could turn evil and have the ability to annihilate the human race. Page may be well-meaning, but as Musk says, he could produce something evil by accident. Google has acquired more than half a dozen robotic companies to date, but the company's ultimate goal for robots is unclear. Andy Rubin, the executive in charge of the maybe not killer robot effort, left Google late last year. Both Page and Musk have publicly discussed their views on artificial intelligence, though not directed at each other. We do have lots of proof points that one can create intelligent things in the world because all of us around. Page said in an interview last year. Therefore, you should presume that someday we will be able to make machines that can reason, think, and do things better than we can. A few months after that, Musk told an interviewer that he believes something seriously dangerous may come about from AI in the next 5 to 10 years. Please note that I am normally super pro technology, and I've never raised this issue until recent months. This is not a case of crying wolf about something I don't understand. See, you know, when I look at artificial intelligence, or, you know, the ability to make computers that are smarter than us, well, we're already doing that. You know, it's one of those things where these computers are processing things faster than we could ever, you know, comprehend. The thing about it, though, can we make things extremely smart, but not give them the capabilities to control things? Where I see technology being extremely helpful and beneficial to the future of the humankind is giving us the capabilities to expand our own minds. And I think when we try to start breaking those barriers. Let's make something that, not only can do something that we can't do, but can think, make decisions, and repair itself. You literally start making a being. It may be artificial to a point, but what are we? Are we not just makeups of compounds that exist? Our cells are what is unique, but in the end, we are what we consume too. We have to take in. Well, they will too. They will need the metal to repair themselves, or all the things that they would need to repair themselves. And if they can think, we make smart or dumb smart things. A backhoe. Well, it's gonna do a lot more than a guy can, unless he's in it, because it doesn't think for itself. It doesn't do everything for itself. It doesn't make, free thought and free rational decisions. You have control over it. A computer, for the most part, if you just have a computer that it's not hooked to really anything, but, you can go on it and look up stuff. That's where, right now we're kind of in that already moving forward, where people are connecting their homes, turning their homes into smart homes and connecting them. And guess who's behind things like Nest? Google. But for the most part, we've had pretty smart computers and internet access that allows us to access information, allows us to broaden us. But I think we start crossing a point that I don't know if we know all the consequences of it yet. And with the another fallback from it too is, well, if you have robots thinking and doing everything for you, are we going to dumb ourselves down anymore? It seems that, some of the youth growing up right now aren't too interested in knowing a whole bunch because, well, they know they can go look it up. How quick and easy of access to information that they have right now makes them not want to already know it. And that's not all, but I'm definitely seeing a lot of that trend. I don't need to learn it now because if I need to know it, I can Google it. So, where does there become a level of helping out society and harming society? I think that's kind of part of planning on what you're creating. And I don't think, I think people like Larry Page, he's all of the Google people, they're so into, I'm doing this for the good, they don't rationale think the bad that might come out of it because they're so involved in moving forward. Not all of them do, I think, are evil, but I think there might be some in there that really do understand and don't care. But says here, Musk and Page had very different upbringings. The former had a difficult childhood in South Africa during apartheid. The later grew up in Michigan. But they are similar in age, disposition, and the desire to pursue projects that sound impossible or downright crazy. Each week, Musk bounces between the SpaceX and Tesla offices in Los Angeles and San Francisco, respectively. When in San Fran, Musk crashes at the homes of friends, including Page. He's kind of homeless, which I think is sort of funny. Page is quoted as saying in the biography, he'll email and say, I don't know where to stay tonight. Can I come over? I've given him a key. I haven't given him a key or anything yet. Sometimes Musk will meet with Page and Google co-founder Sergey Brin at a secret apartment owned by the internet giant to talk through ridiculous ideas. It's kind of our recreation, I guess, Page says in the book. It's fun for the three of us to talk about kind of crazy things, and we find stuff that eventually turns out to be real. We go through hundreds or thousands of possible things before arriving at the ones that are most promising. One such idea, according to a friend who once attended the brainstorm, building a commuter plane that was always circling the earth, and you'd hop up to it and get places incredibly fast. And you can read the rest of that. It's at Mashable. You can also find it through Drudge Report. Okay, let's go ahead and move on here. I watched this Liberty Report from Ron Paul. You can find it at truthandmedia.com. And for people that don't know, that's Ben Swan's news site, benswan.com. Right now is still being forwarded to truthandmedia.com. Go check it out. But Dr. Ron Paul asks, are we a nation of wimps?
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Are we a nation of wimps? What is the status of the American dream? We now live in a society where safety and security are to be sought at all costs. The sacrifice of liberty is not a concern for most Americans today. This is not something new, and it has been characteristic of most people throughout history. But it has gotten especially bad in America since 9/11. In addition, many Americans have become deeply worried as a consequence of the economic crisis that started in 2008. They have lost confidence in their future financial security, but continue to deny our nation's bankruptcy. This has prompted many to opt for dependency on government, even if it requires the use of force to get what they want to ameliorate their fears. Rather than having confidence in the benefits that accrue from a free society, the majority of Americans are now frightened by the thought of self-reliance and accepting the responsibility that comes with liberty. There has been a steady erosion of confidence over the past 100 years as the American people as a whole have accepted the so-called need for big government to provide safety and security for its citizens. In the process, they have readily accepted the personal income tax and the abuse of the IRS, along with the illegal power of the money manipulators at the Federal Reserve to pay the bills by simply printing money. Unfortunately, they have also convinced themselves of our righteousness by supporting force to spread American so-called greatness throughout the world. This, of course, is a fantasy and is self-deceptive. This trend has been ongoing since the Woodrow Wilson era, up to and including the policies designed by the current crop of neoconservatives. It's a sense of insecurity that prompts the need to demonstrate strength and confidence in an artificial manner. In a way, it's a little man syndrome, to compensate for our diminishing achievements in our domestic economy and our position in world affairs. This includes the chicken hawks as well as those who participate in aggressive behavior both domestically and internationally. Many get a sense of feeling of strength, a feeling of patriotism from being able to bomb and kill individuals 6,000 miles away from our home, though they have never committed an aggressive act against us. Our policies are designed to search for enemies to destroy, though they pose no threat to us. We use remotely controlled drones and cruise missiles to perpetuate a sense of power, even against the powerless third world pseudo-enemies. We never hesitate to put on sanctions to punish those who do not obey our wishes, causing suffering, including death, to millions of innocent people. It is common now for us to pursue these policies around the world with the use of surrogates and training of other people. Because Americans, though they want to be powerful and in control, do not want to see any more Americans killed. In spite of the need for heroic militarism, Americans are getting tired of proving to the world that we are not a nation of wimps. They have been convinced that we can be the strongest nation in the world, maintain an empire, and contract out the dirty work. And they seem surprised that it's not working very well. It is now necessary for us to make snipers our superheroes. Matter of fact, every member of the military now is a hero, risking his life defending freedom and the Constitution and destroying constant public displays of gratitude and special recognition. This pretense occurs while neglecting the veterans whose lives have been ruined by the senselessness of wars. Denial is epidemic as to what should be done to address the problem of misplaced militarism being used to compensate for a deep-seated fear of inadequacy. Just killing imaginary enemies doesn't make us strong and confident. The danger is that this morally confusing policy can destroy the soul of a nation. We must remember that insecurity and fear provide fodder for authoritarians, and they are only too willing to oblige and fill the needs of the weak to feel better about themselves by engaging in the patriotic defense of our country, even if the threats are manufactured by the propagandists. The tragic part of all this is that it's all done at the expense of liberty, since loss of liberty was the major source of the problem in the first place. Although the wimpiness of the American citizenry has been developing for quite a while, on 9/11, 19 individuals brought America to her knees. This was principally due to the lack of understanding of exactly why 9/11 occurred, and to the successful efforts of our government to perpetuate a fraudulent explanation that those who want to kill us are doing so only because they are angry with us due to our freedoms and our prosperity. We are constantly being frightened of some unknown potential enemy lurking around the corner, ready to attack and destroy us at any moment. The Bush doctrine of preemptive war, which is nothing more than aggression, was met with essentially no resistance from the American people and very little from politicians. This idea of presidents being able to go to war recklessly and ask questions later possibly satisfies those who claim this serves the interests of our national security, but it's a reflection of a sense of insecurity and contributes to the persistent attitude that we have a great need for empire to make us safe and free. Nothing could be further from the truth. Support for these policies come from the many who succumb to the propaganda. Complacency is also a major contributing factor as people become more and more dependent as long as they believe the government will deliver safety and security. The wimps want to believe these false promises in spite of the evidence of their failure and the true costs. But they may be about to change. Liberty is not thought much about as long as benefits come in spite of the increasing concern for the solvency of the country. This attitude can change quickly when the dollar takes a big hit. The majority of Americans are deeply worried that a foreign enemy is at our doorstep. The Al-Qaeda could hit us any day and is out to get us in any country in which we find ourselves. Meanwhile, it appears that ISIS is winning all the wars. People have to be convinced that a potential Hitler is about to attack us at any time, even without any evidence that it's likely to happen. During the 20th century, hundreds of millions of people were killed by the communists and the fascists, yet the size and scope of today's dangers are minuscule in comparison. Blinded by the propaganda, the wimps refuse to see how the enemy, which is real to some degree, is made stronger by our inciting hatred, by our occupations, and foolishly getting ourselves involved in civil wars in the many countries of the Middle East. The evidence is overwhelming that our efforts in the Middle East are the best recruiting tool for the jihadist radicals to recruit supporters willing to wage guerrilla war against us. The process has led us to spend hundreds of billions of dollars, with the results of being that our enemies grow stronger as they end up using our weapons against us. The current foreign policy has been an absolute failure in achieving any positive results, and it certainly hasn't removed the need and desire for the American people to feel victorious on the battlefield to compensate for their sense of inferiority and insecurity. Economic dependency is every bit as bad as the need for the American people to have a military victory to feed their egos. This is initiated, quite frankly, by the politicians seeking votes and anxious to get people dependent on them so that they can serve as their rescuers. Bad economies, essentially caused by bad economic planning by our government and the Federal Reserve, breeds dependency. It also contributes to wealth inequality, and tragically, the blame is placed on free markets and liberty as the cause, rather than understanding how the problems are created by the government and its economic policies. The worse the problems get, the louder the demands become for fairness in the redistribution of goods, which of course have to be first stolen from one group to give to another. This attitude breeds discontent and contributes significantly to the turmoil in our inner cities as the contest between those demanding entitlements are pitched against the militarized police. The militarization of the police of recent years contributes significantly to the problems which prompt those who are dependent to lobby the politicians to fight for their share of the wealth, while at the same time the economic pie is shrinking. Rarely is there ever a demand for independence, self-reliance, free markets. Instead, it's for more welfare redistribution for which the recipients believe they are entitled and have a right to. Of course, all of this contributes to further wimpiness of our society. Sociopaths, those without scruples, appear tough, but this only compensates for their own inadequacies and fear. They believe the military can provide the manliness they seek. They're convinced that they are showing strength and superiority over others, yet the real problem is their own lack of confidence. The more inadequately they feel, greater is the need for aggression to prove their toughness. This is especially troublesome since our leaders are incapable of expressing regret or a willingness to reconsider the policies that have caused so much harm. Without a conscience, they never suffer from PTSD. This requires that they ridicule, badger, and discredit anyone with enough self-confidence and self-esteem that does not require artificial strength achieved by bullying weaker nations or individuals by hiding behind the authoritarian hope provided by government. It is this insecurity that drives the neoconservatives to depend on war for their sense of satisfaction. Actually, they are wimps and afraid of their own shadow. They believe Al-Qaeda exists under our bed and we're about to be invaded. At least this is what they want the people to believe so they can pursue their bold militarism for their own psychological and special interest needs. Since these are false and unnecessary justifications for war, success is rare. Since World War II, the wars have been essentially lost. Now, bands of renegades are achieving military victories every place we go to promote regime change, to teach people in faraway lands to adhere to democratic elections following our rules. If the candidate we support doesn't win, no problem. We can then simply throw our support behind the next regime change. Too often, our fighting and spending money help our enemies and never serve our national security. It's easy to frighten the people by stories of the attacks by ISIS, yet they never mention countries like Saudi Arabia, which practices Sharia law and are not bashful about beheading citizens for even social and religious reasons. The fear and insecurity many Americans feel is encouraged by individuals seeking power and money. The only answer to this is for the people to stand up to the truth that the real wimps are the ones who hide behind militarism and initiate needless wars. Confidence and strength of character to challenge forced redistribution of wealth is also necessary. An answer can be found in promoting the cause of liberty. The people, unfortunately, have been conditioned to believe that government violence, both economic and military, is a tool that serves the people. The job of the propagandists, for which there are many, is to convince the people that it's all done for the purpose of helping them. Unfortunately, dependency destroys the soul as well as the soul of a nation by eliminating the satisfaction one gets from producing freely as an individual and assuming responsibility for oneself. And as this lack of self-confidence grows, so does the dependency on the state. Those who seek more government to help alleviate their sense of weakness and fear conclude that it's all the government's fault for failing to provide society with enough security. Seeking more liberty is rarely seen as the answer to the people's frustrations. Instead, this produces a sense of victimization that results in demanding that government do more for those dependent who eagerly grant more power to the authoritarians. Throughout history, there have always been opportunities for the authoritarians to run roughshod over the people. A nation of wimps dependent on the government for safety and security opens the doors for the authoritarians who delight in satisfying their needs by controlling others and falsely believing in their own strength and wisdom. Soldiers fighting wars and bureaucrats passing out welfare are emboldened by a sense of satisfaction that they are serving a special purpose for providing the strength that the weak and the helpless need. The problem is that these efforts are never helpful in dealing with the dependency of the weak. By accommodating the needy, who are looking in the wrong places for satisfaction, the dependency only gets worse. The solution can only come from understanding the significance of practicing self-reliance. This cannot come from government. If it does not come from within us, it will only lead to frustration and a greater desire to foolishly give up more liberty for safety and security. Those who are dependent will continue to seek security in the entitlement system and strength from a national endorsement of the warrior state. The politicians are well attuned to the desires of those whose weakness encourages them to become dependent on government largesse. Polling is key to the politician's success in responding to the demands and the expectations of those who are no longer self-reliant. Everyone is aware that a thug with a gun used to satisfy his personal needs or demands is a criminal. Politicians and armies in a dependent society who use guns to wage war and forcibly redistribute wealth at will are criminals as well. This is not only true for many of the poor who have become dependent. Business interests, especially in the midst of a crisis, are always looking to the government for favors with financial bailouts, targeted regulations, special contracts, as we see in the military-industrial complex and in the many benefits banks get from our monetary system. A predictable consequence of Keynesian economic policy is the development of a structural poverty which affects even those desirous of independence and self-reliance, but are more or less forced to listen to the promises of the politicians who claim they have an answer for their needs. All political factions are anxious to take care of the people, but they do nothing more than create more dependency and a poorer nation. It seems at this time that the task is overwhelming because more people become dependent on the state, and as they do, they become more fearful of the future. The solution has to be found in peaceful resistance to the policies of government benevolence, which were supposed to solve our problems. Dependency on government force in redistribution of wealth and militarism around the world as a source of strength has to end. The people have to come to realize that real strength comes from resisting the status quo that preaches the doctrine of a command society, and to recognize that insecurity drives many Americans support wars that are expensive and futile. Depending on militarism and promotion of empire to compensate for weakness and dependency is not an answer. We must raise up a generation of individuals who are not frightened and embarrassed to support the natural instincts of peace, love, and friendship. Wars do little to provide strength of character for individuals who do not understand why we're in the mess that we find ourselves today. Not only should we insist that the government not lie to us, we should stop lying to ourselves as well. This means that there should be no more glorification of war and using the military personnel as a source of our confidence and strength. This can only come by living in a free society. The prevailing attitude of the American people today reflects weakness, fearfulness, and dependency. In general, confidence and self-reliance has been lost. Government failure, false promises, bad economic policy has contributed greatly to this condition. Human nature also is a major contributor to this sense of hopelessness. It is not unnatural to accept unearned benefits when trouble begins. We as a nation have grown to believe that government redistribution of wealth through force is a right and an entitlement. Sadly, hard work, savings, production, sound economy, and honest money are of little interest to most Americans. True sense of worth can only come from productive effort. When people become overly dependent on government redistribution of wealth, true happiness and satisfaction is difficult, if not impossible, to achieve. There is little personal satisfaction when individuals become addicted to government benefits, which actually worsen the conditions and increase the fear that the future does not bode well for us. This only provides the incentive and the need to expand the welfare-warfare state. The cycle, once it has started, sets the stage for the continued erosion of liberty, and in spite of the fact that people become unhappy, poor, and angry, they blame the government for not doing enough to take care of them. Under these conditions, the demagogues in and out of government thrive. The social and economic philosophers, politicians, power seekers, and powerful special interests all step forth with solutions that only serve their interests and not the interests of the people who are on the receiving end of bad policy. It is their use of the wimps to enhance their agenda that becomes a full-time job in Washington. The weak are conditioned to believe the lies and promises about both domestic and international affairs. Only individual liberty and the principles of a republic offer us any hope. Is the American dream dead? Once it was characteristic of most Americans to believe in the American dream. That meant there was a strong conviction that everyone had an equal opportunity to achieve any goal they sought with hard work and effort. They believed in the work ethic and that determination would ultimately pay off. Achieving the American dream was thought to be a result of hard work. Today, there are still a lot of people who believe in the American dream, but too often they are individuals who have recently left countries much poorer than ours and are hopeful that with hard work and effort, they too can have a better life for themselves here. It is proven by many who come to this country, both illegal and legal, that they bring with them a work ethic that has become difficult to find in Americans who have become dependent on the American dream being delivered to them by government action and corporate favoritism. Many Americans have come to the conclusion that hard work and effort is no longer rewarded due to the many obstacles put in their way by an overly intrusive government. And it is for this reason that the numbers are growing of those individuals anxious to expatriate and go to other countries where they believe that their work and effort will not be diminished as they are in our country today. The majority of the American people, unfortunately, have accepted the idea that it is necessary to be aggressive and dependent and driven by fearfulness to survive in a political economic culture that rewards political action and lobbying for success rather than being rewarded for hard work and effort. Because of this, most policies in Washington are designed to accommodate this culture. Even though government policy has been the main contributor to the problems we face and the destruction of the American dream, the majority is still supporting the idea that more activism by government to intervene in our lives and in the economy is the solution. Welfare demands drive a lot of politicians to continuously redistribute wealth out of a desire for fairness with a policy that does the opposite. The zeal for patriotism and for the support of America's greatness makes the electorate overly anxious and willing to support militarism, which has done such great harm to us as a nation and to our moral character. Even though the majority of the American people reflect a philosophy of the past 100 years that promoted dependency and foreign entanglement, a large number of citizens are now recognizing that it has been a failed policy. However difficult this may be to overcome, it does not mean that our policies can't be reversed. More accurately, we're probably in a transition period, and even though many are frightened by change, support for a philosophy based on liberty and peace is gaining in acceptance. There are signs on the horizon that the American people are awakening and once again are beginning to understand what the American dream was all about and how our politicians and our culture of dependency has led us astray. The intellectuals of the past century were very supportive of these views that gave credibility to both the domestic welfare programs as well as the international intervention that has given us so many needless and wasteful wars. The good news is that the intellectual framework that is now developing in our society is advocating a different sentiment for the American people. One day, if enacted, it will reignite the idea of self-reliance and emphasize that by hard work, people can get ahead and do better economically rather than by depending on a government that has driven us into bankruptcy. Hardly has the educational system been enhanced by a $1.3 trillion in student debt, which is now currently being defaulted on. All we have to show for it is a large number of graduates not well trained and without jobs. Something different is required than depending on government-controlled education. Thankfully, it's available in the growing interest in home and private schooling. The internet provides the vehicle for spreading the answers to the mess created by the authoritarians' false promises to provide safety and security by sacrificing liberty. The good news is that we're well on our way to raising up a new generation that understands the dangers and the limits of the system that we have today and are anxious to promote and support the ideas of liberty. That is where the answers will be found. Thank you for listening.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, and you can get that for free on YouTube, and he wants everyone to share it. He's not any longer with the Ron Paul channel, and he's ventured off onto the Ron Paul Liberty Report, and he's putting up no paywalls for that. So if you're running a blog or you're sharing things, feel free to share any of the Liberty Reports. Kind of going off of what he was saying, you know, it's back to, you know, you can't expect government to fix government. And there was something that I talked about on a previous broadcast, and it was the warning about the USA Freedom Act and how this was kind of sitting on the bench is a controlled opposition bill, basically, to the Patriot Act, because so many people understand the Patriot Act is definitely not patriotic. This one, again, this one's from Truth and Media. And it's USA Freedom Act passes Congress. Representative Amash says it will not end bulk data collection. And as long as my computer doesn't freeze up here, we'll get onto it. I've been having internet and electrical problems. We've had our whole street just blinking on and off. My stuff's on battery backup, but I think we're also having internet problems here. Now I can't even do anything here. Huh. Give me a second here. Let me try something. Okay. This should work. Maybe. Maybe not. I still should be on air now, hopefully. Jules said that lost connection. Says I'm still connected. Okay. Good. Now if I can get my browser back up. I'm not sure why my internet's just not wanting to play today. Okay. Now, if I can get this back up, I might have to. There we go. I had to go in and actually end task on my browser. Okay, now I got it back up, and hopefully it doesn't crash on me again. Okay, USA Freedom Act passes Congress. Representative Mash says it will not end bulk data collection. The USA Freedom Act has passed the United States House of Representatives overwhelmingly with 338 votes in favor and 88 against. It now moves to U.S. Senate. Congressman Amash, who has the strongest voting record in Congress on constitutional issues, was one of the 88 votes against the Freedom Act. On his Facebook page, Amash explains why he voted the way he did. In part, he writes, "The bill's sponsors and unfortunately some outside advocacy groups wrongfully claim that H.R. 2048 ends bulk collection. It's true the bill ends the phone dragnet as we currently know it by having the phone companies themselves hold, search, and analyze certain data at the request of the government, which is worse in many ways given the broader set of data the companies hold. But H.R. 2048 actually expands the statutory basis for the large-scale collection of most data. H.R. 2048 does this by authorizing the government to order the production of record based upon a specific selection term. like a search term used in a search engine. The records sought still must be relevant to an investigation, so it's possible the court's ruling will continue to restrain the government in some fashion, but it's more likely a court looking at H.R. 2048's language will see the specific selection term as defining the outer limits of what Congress considers acceptably relevant under Section 215. Representative Justin Amash, Michigan. Proponents of the bill say that under the USA Freedom Act, the NSA would be prohibited from collecting telephone metadata under the Patriot Act. Instead, the agency would have to acquire a warrant every time it wanted to access phone records, which would be held by telephone companies. Officials would need to submit data requests via keywords in order to collect relevant data from companies. The bill would also reform the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISA Court, by setting up a 5-person panel that would offer advice when intelligence agencies are seeking new interpretations of existing law. Some court rulings would need to be declassified. And that one's from Ben Swan at truthtomedia.com. Now, I posted some articles on the Facebook page. Let me go ahead and bring those up. Okay. This one came out of the federalistpapers.org. And this one is, that's no cactus. Arizona residents get Orwellian surprise. Arizona residents have gotten a big surprise after noticing something odd about some of the local cactus plants. After investigating the off-looking cacti, they discovered something alarming, a surveillance system straight out of Orwell's 1984. That's no cactus. Turns out that some of the cacti in Arizona's Paradise Valley aren't real. In fact, they are hidden cameras that serve as part of a surveillance system the city installed last year. And this from Fox 10 out there.
Eyes of the law are everywhere. Photo radar, dash cams, even body cameras. But now the town of Paradise Valley is hiding cameras inside cactus.
These cactus have been popping up. Cactus cameras have been popping up throughout Paradise Valley over the past few days. And residents, they have no idea why. And the city doesn't want to talk to them about it.
Fox 10's Jill Monier went into Paradise Valley to investigate, and she got some answers about what these cactus cameras are for. Jill.
Well, Carrie, we've seen about 24 fake cactus in Paradise Valley already serving as cover for cell towers. But some people were alarmed to see cameras being placed in cactus around town yesterday. And while town leaders didn't initially want to talk with us about the cameras, we did end up getting some kind of explanation.
Look close enough at the cactus as you drive through Paradise Valley, and you might see some cacti looking back.
I've lived here for 30 years, and I had never seen cameras in a saguaro before.
One cactus camera was installed at the roundabout at 40th Street in Stanford yesterday.
There were these guys standing up on ladders. There were 3 12-foot ladders, and they were working on the top.
Of the cactus?
Yeah.
Putting the cactus
together.
Cactus. And residents are curious what the cameras are for.
Your guess is as good as mine.
And I thought maybe when I stopped here, I thought maybe y'all knew what it was.
We asked Paradise Valley Police about the cameras, but they said they were not prepared to make a statement at this time. So we came here to Town Hall, where people were also hesitant to talk with us, saying they wanted to wait until all the cameras were installed. But eventually, the town manager did answer some of our questions.
The town is embarking on the installation of license plate readers.
Town manager Kevin Burke says the cameras run license plates of cars against a hot list database. If the car is stolen or the subject of an Amber Alert, police will be notified. Fox 10 did a story in February about the same technology being installed on traffic lights, and city officials declined to talk publicly then, too.
Why not be more public about this?
And again, not trying to hide anything. The police department, this was my request of, before we get going on these at one at a time, let's get them all together, make sure we understand everybody's on the same page.
Burke says the cameras are not active at this point.
We want to make sure we're answering everybody's questions about privacy, about data retention, about, how the things will be used. And so we want to make sure that that's well vetted before we're turning these up.
Some would say, shouldn't that have been vetted before they even went up?
It probably is fair. I think this is a technology that we're always learning about, and so every time you think, okay, we've got it covered, somebody else brings up a new idea. Well, what about this? And you're like, let's think about that. How do we want to respond to that? So it's been a work in progress. I just feel like it needs more vetting before we're ready to go.
Burke says the cameras are being placed on the perimeter of town. He says the cameras are not being put into fake cactus to be secretive, but he says it's because there are no light poles in the area to put them on. He says they're trying to make the cameras aesthetically pleasing. This is all part of a $2 million police technology upgrade the council passed last year. Jill Monier, Fox 10 News.
And what another thing that's not being addressed, do you trust what the government tells you they're going to use this type of technology for? It's not always, we won't use it for we don't believe that you won't use it. We see too often they always say, oh, we won't use this law for this reason, but eventually it always is. And the same with technology. Facebook, when it first started becoming popular, wasn't something that was constantly being used against everybody. Now it's like a weapon against people. Whether it be the bullying online or the trolling or the, hacking people's accounts or, criticizing. It just, the list goes on. You post something, you're all of a sudden you're getting called into, your boss's office. What you do outside of work should be your business, and it always has been. But now, even being a fast food worker, you could lose your job over what you post on Facebook. So technology, law enforcement always uses technology to their advantage, and they will more than likely do it even if they don't plan on it right now. And you can find that at the federalistpapers.org. Now, something that I've been talking about, and I have a couple more articles on it. Or at least one more. Thought I had a couple though. Okay, yeah. First one, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Clause everyone should oppose. This from the Washington Post. And this was by Elizabeth Warren, a Democrat. And I was reading this, and I'll read it here. The United States is in the final stages of negotiating the TPP, a massive free trade agreement with Mexico, Canada, Japan, Singapore, and 7 other countries who will benefit from the TPP. American workers, consumers, small businesses, taxpayers, or the biggest multinational corporations in the world. One strong hint is buried in the fine print in the closely guarded draft. The provision, an increasingly common feature of trade agreements, is called Investor State Dispute Settlement, or ISDS. The name may sound mild, but don't be fooled. Agreeing to ISDS's in this numerous new treaty would tilt the playing field in the United States further in favor of big multinational corporations. Worse, it would undermine U.S. sovereignty. USDS would allow foreign companies to challenge U.S. laws and potentially to pick up huge payouts from taxpayers without ever stepping foot in a U.S. court. Here's how it would work. Imagine that the United States bans a toxic chemical that is often added to gasoline because of its health and environmental consequences. If a foreign company that makes a toxic chemical opposes the law, it would normally have to challenge it in a U.S. court, but with ISDS, the company could skip the U.S. courts and go before an international panel of arbitrators. If the company won, the ruling couldn't be challenged in U.S. courts, and the arbitration panel would require American taxpayers to cough up millions and even billions of dollars in damages. If that seems shocking, buckle your seatbelt. ISDS could lead to gigantic fines, but it wouldn't employ independent judges. Instead, highly paid corporate lawyers would go back and forth between representing corporations one day and sitting in judgment the next. Maybe that makes sense in an arbitration between two corporations, but not the case between corporations and governments. If you're a lawyer looking to maintain or attract high-paying corporate clients, how likely are you to rule against those corporations when it's your turn to be in the judge's seat? You can read the rest of that there. Of course, she kind of goes beyond just looking at, that, but it does. It's a bill for the corporations, not you, not the consumer, not the small business owner, but large corporations, the multinational corporations, the ones with the money. And I have one here out of thehill.com. Senate deals stinging defeat to Obama trade agenda. Senate Democrats on Tuesday delivered a stinging blow to President Obama's trade agenda by voting to prevent the chamber from tackling fast-track legislation. A motion to cut off a filibuster and proceed to the trade bill fell short of the 60-vote hurdle, failing 52 to 45. Senator Tom Carper, Delaware, was the only Democrat to back it. The vote is an embarrassing loss for Obama and senior officials in his administration who have spent weeks lobbying Democrats intensively to support fast track. The bill has an unusual coalition of backers that notably includes Obama and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who are longtime rivals. The fast track has run into significant Democrat opposition led by Senator Majority Leader Harry Reid and Senator Elizabeth Warren. The legislation faces even stronger opposition from Democrats in the House, and the surprise Senate failure could signal the beginning of the end for Obama's top priorities. Obama last week invited a group of wavering Democrat senators to the White House, and Vice President Biden placed calls to swing votes. The charm offensive showed little effect, however. The Republicans exonerated the president for failing to move members of his own party. Essentially, what the Democrats are doing today by trying to block us from even getting on this legislation is throwing their own president under the bus, said Senate Republican Conference Chairman John Thune, South Dakota. The vote is a big win for Reid, a staunch opponent of Fast Track who appeared to have little leverage after trade bill passed Finance Committee with a bipartisan 20-6 vote. The simple fact is that to pass the Senate bill, bills must have strong Democratic support, he said in a statement after the vote. Senator McConnell needs to work with Democrats for our votes. I hope he will reconsider his approach. Labor unions and other left-leaning groups declared war on the Fast Track bill, which they argue would ship jobs overseas. The Senate is generally a more pro-trade body than the House, making it easier to move trade agreements through the upper chamber. Obama has shown irritation at the barbs thrown at him by his own party and returned fire. He has repeatedly said Warren is wrong on trade in recent interviews. Senator Sherrod Brown, Democrat, Ohio, reportedly said Tuesday that the president went too far, suggesting the comments were disrespectful and possibly sexist. Obama referred to Warren by her first name in a recent interview with Yahoo News. Terry O'Neill, president of the National Organization for Women, went even further in an interview with The Hill on Tuesday. Yes, I think it is sexist. I think the president was trying to build up his own trustworthiness on his issue by convincing us that Senator Warren's concerns are not to be taken seriously. But he did it in a sexist way, saying the truth of the matter is Elizabeth is a politician like everybody else. I think it was disrespectful. Oh, wow. I don't like crying about things like that, but I wanted to scroll down here. Because we kind of warned about the fast track and all the bad things that could come out of this. And there was something in here that just kind of caught my eye. Said here, but the failed votes gives McConnell a chance to highlight divisions in the Democratic Party and portray Senate Democrats who are aiming to win back the majority next year as obstructionists. Blocking the Senate from even debating such an important issue is not the answer. Senators who do so are choosing to stand with special interests and against the American jobs that are knocking down more unfair trade barriers could support. He said in a statement. Two Republican presidential candidates, Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Rand Paul, voted in favor of taking up the trade bill. Another, Senator Mark Rubio, missed the vote, and as did Senator Lindsey Graham. McConnell switched his vote from yes to no, which allows him to return to the measure at a later date. And you can read the full article at thehill.com. And I just thought it was pretty interesting that Rand Paul and Ted Cruz were supporting this. Basically, the fast tracking. And I got exclusive that was just posted this evening from Adam Kokesh. John B. Wells fired from Coast to Coast AM for hosting Kokesh. And I know a lot of people don't like Kokesh, but I'll still host.
Myself and Adam, and a colleague, if we will, brother in arms, is here today. He is a syndicated radio host. You may have remembered him from Coast to Coast AM from Saturday nights. And he started his new project, which is amazing, his new radio show called Caravan to Midnight. He is the master of theater of the mind when it comes to radio. It's the legend, it's the man, it's Mr. John B. Wells. Round of applause.
Hello, everybody. That was some kind of an intro. Yeah, normally when you go from coast to coast, it's you go from coast to toast. That did not happen. What happened was it really began with that little YouTube video I saw of Adam up there in Washington, loading that shotgun out. And I thought, that looks like something I would have done some years ago, but I'm all respectable now, I can do that. But I thought, being young Dean, formerly with InfoWars, I said, you think we can get Adam on the show, do you? And Dean said, think so. I said, okay, let's do that. So then I called the executive producer. She was a nice lady. I liked her then, I still like her. We were ideologically opposed in some ways, but she's all right. She's a good spirit, because she let me get Adam on the program. And at that time, he had just gotten out of a little bit of unpleasantness up there at the, I think you call it a lockup up there in D.C. And on the program, I said, I really admire your willingness to be demonstrative in your patriotism. Now, a lot of people would consider this to be reckless, but I think you're right. The point needs to be made. So maybe you made your point, and the judge made her point, and so maybe it'll just be a wash, and that'll be that. It looks like that's what happened. Am I close, Adam?
No, I came out ahead.
Yeah, okay, even better. You came out ahead. I won't say it's a chest beating, but the thing is that that was the beginning of the end of my latest tenure with corporate radio. One of these people that gets this is going on all over the place, I guess. I generally get fired from just about every job that I do. That happened at the legendary rock station, the Zoo over here, and really for the same reasons, because I can't prove this because I'm not a subscriber, but what really got to the corporate radio apparatus was they figured out when they saw the numbers on Saturday night reaching or exceeding Monday through Friday, that sent a message, and the message was the people out there in America land are interested in this. They want to hear this, and you won't let them hear it. So as long as I'm sitting in this chair, they're going to hear it. And then if you decide that you've had enough and you want to let me go, they're going to hear that too, and they did, and so they came to caravanmidnight.com, because everything's going to the web, right? Everything is. You go up the Dallas North Tollway over here, you'll see over on the west side of the street, it used to say Clear Channel across the top of that building. Well, it doesn't say that now. If you were to send a message to Joe Schmo at clearchannel.com, it doesn't go there anymore, it goes to iHeartMedia.com now. So really, those guys played it beautifully, and now it's iHeart Media Management, I believe LLC. So dovetailing nicely into that is net neutrality. And then within the last few days, we have heard that within 8 years, they're saying 8 years, but they don't really know, because the next thing out of let me not get ahead of the story. Within 8 years, we're going to run short on bandwidth, and it's going to be very difficult for everybody to do all the streaming and all the web searching and everything, and viewing stuff on the net that they've become accustomed to over the last, year or two, really. And today's news was that the internet is already choking down. So it's much like reading Pravda back in the old Soviet Union. The people there understood that if you just do the mirror opposite of what you're reading, you will now know what the truth is, what the Pravda is, because Pravda means truth in Russian. So interviewing Adam was, I am delighted to report, the beginning of the end, because I was no corporate guy then, and I'm no corporate guy now. I stay away from everybody. I do, except the occasional exception, and that would be you. And I said it then and I meant it, and I'm saying it now and I mean it. I admire your willingness to be demonstrative in your patriotism in an attempt to save this republic before it winds up a permanent oligarchy run by a few families and a few individuals at the expense of everybody else. So that's it. That's it. I will remain, just disappearing into the mist. I won't be showing up trying to attract attention. In fact, I wasn't really sure I wanted to be anywhere in these cameras and so forth, but if it sends the message, I guess I'm a control freak. I don't know where it's going, but if it goes up on YouTube, then it's okay with me. If it goes on your channel, it's completely okay with me. But I just want you to know, everybody, that's Adam and everybody who loves freedom. And that word freedom has not become this word that's been said so many times within a falsehood that when it hits your ears now, it means nothing. It's just a word where you have people mocking William Wallace in that Mel Gibson movie where the last words out of his mouth are freedom before they do all kinds of horrible things to him. It's like, it's just a movie. Well, you may not think that you were in one of those movies, but you are. You were in a spy movie, you were in a revolutionary movie, you were in a Matrix movie, you were in a futuristic science fiction movie that has now become science fact. You are being surveilled, you are being tracked. They want your DNA, they want all your phone calls, they want all your records and all this. I knew this 10 years ago, easily 10 years ago, more than that now. What is 2015 now? So make it 12, 13 years that all of the faxes, all of the emails, all the mobile phones, all the landline calls, all that stuff is all being databased. By the time you find out what's happening, things are very far down the road. Everything that you think of as being current technology is 40 years at least behind what really exists. So I'll say the same thing in closing as I say at the closing of every program. Exercise caution in your daily affairs. Keep your eyes up always. And make ready for what's to come, because the baby is coming. Thank you.
And you can find that on Adam Kokesh's YouTube channel. Exclusive John B. Wells fired from Coast to Coast AM for hosting Kokesh. Okay. Now, this out of Breitbart, I think, kind of relates to that. The corporate media is, in a way, basically controlled. Now, there's factions within that, and I understand that, and this becomes one of them, this next article I'm going to get into out of Breitbart. But, it's the alternative media places like UCY that allow for information to actually get out to people, not in a controlled way. Each host on this network has control.
My car, it's like our second home.
Commercial popping up. Give me a second here. Now, if you look at it, the media has basically got rid of shows. When you look at Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory, they basically ran that one into the ground by limiting what they could really do and removing their shows. And the media is really controlled, and alternative media, you see why. Each host is, controls their own broadcast. It's not a controlled environment. But, we have the corporate media, though, that there is a division. You have Fox News that doesn't go along with the president. And there, we still have a division, even though both sides are still working for the basic same ends. They have different paths that they want to go down to achieve that. And that's basically what they fight over. Well, this out of Breitbart.com, Obama rips Fox. We're going to have to change how the media reports. For going on 7 years, we have learned 3 things about President Obama. 1, he loves the poor so much he continues to create more of them. 2, he loves the poor so much he does everything in his power to keep them poor. 3, he doesn't see the opposition as loyal, but as bad players, his enemy. This is especially true of Fox News, which Obama ripped as anti-poor bigots during a Wednesday afternoon summit on poverty. And let me see if this will play here.
Where you've got the middle class, and the question's been, who are you mad at if you're struggling? If you're working, but you don't seem to be getting ahead. And over the last 40 years, sadly, I think there's been an effort to either make folks mad at folks at the top or to be mad at folks at the bottom. And I think the effort to suggest that the poor are sponges, leeches, are...
And, of course, it crashes on me. Okay, let me find it here. Leeches don't want to work, are lazy, and are undeserving, got traction. And look, it's still being propagated. I have to say that if you watch Fox News on a regular basis, it's constant venue. They will find folks who make me mad. I don't know where they find them. They're all like, I don't want to work. I just want a free Obama phone or whatever. And that becomes an entire narrative and gets worked up. And very rarely do you hear an interview of a waitress, which is much more typical, who is raising a couple of kids and doing everything right, but still can't pay the bills. You said something kind of important there, Obama, and still can't pay the bills under you and everything that you say you were doing for the poor. But, it says here, Quote, and so if we're going to change how Representative John Boehner and Senator Mitch McConnell think, we're going to have to change how our body politic thinks, which means we're going to have to change how media reports on these issues and how people's impressions of what it's like to struggle in this economy looks like and how budgets connect to that. And that's a hard process because that requires a much broader conversation than typically we have on the nightly news. After 7 failed years to watch Obama sit there and discuss the poor as though he is part of the solution and not the problem is laughable. And let's not forget that Obama knows nothing about poverty. He has lived a privileged life. Obama attended prep schools as a child, lived with his well-to-do grandparents in Honolulu as a teen, where he attended Panahu, a fancy private school. Both of his grandparents were all well-educated. She even worked as the vice president of a bank. For a time, Obama had a nanny. From there, Obama attended Occidental College in California, was well off enough to visit Pakistan for 3 weeks. He then attended 2 of the most prestigious colleges in the country, Columbia and Harvard. The closest Obama ever came to experiencing anything close to poverty was during his time as a community organizer in Chicago. And in that dynamic, the poor were just pawns for Obama to manipulate to achieve his political ambitions. Obama knows nothing of struggle or what life is like for those who do. And after 7 years of his failed economic policies, we also know he doesn't give a damn enough about the poor to change his policies in a way that might actually help them. Obama likes poor people fine. He likes them dependent on the government. He also likes the news media to do what it's told. And there were reports out. I don't have them up in front of me, talking about potential to go after basically media talking out about politics. Well, everything's political when the government's involved in it. Everything, and you hit a big old roadblock there. Basically, you would just be puppets. Now, I had another one here out of InfoWars that I think there's going to be a lot of parents out there that are not going to be too happy. And this one, federal bill would require all public school students be vaccinated. Vaccinate All Children Act does not contain exemptions for reasons of conscience or religion. A bill introduced at the federal level earlier this month would require all children attending public and secondary schools nationwide to be immunized as prescribed by the CDC. H.R. 2232, the Vaccinate All Children Act of 2015, introduced on May 1st by Florida Democrat Frederica S. Wilson, would withhold federal health service grants to states unless they demonstrate school immunization requirements to the Secretary's satisfaction. The bill currently requires that each student enrolled in one of the state's public elementary schools or public secondary schools to be vaccinated in accordance with the recommendations of the Advisory Committee on the Immunization Practices, a CDC panel of 15 experts. Congresswoman Wilson said vaccines have a proven track record of being safe and effective. No, they don't. Because that track record has been proven to be manipulated and false by the people that were involved in it. As a former elementary school principal, I know the importance of childhood vaccinations. Research has shown that vaccinations are effective. They keep children healthy, save lives, and protect future generations of Americans. Wilson stated in February, the health and safety of children must be our top priority, Wilson said in a press release accompanying the introduction of her bill. Children who are not vaccinated put themselves and others in danger of acquiring and spreading preventable diseases. This is why I introduced the Vaccinate All Children Act, because requiring vaccination for students will save lives and protect future generations. In fact, the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program has paid out well over $2 billion to the families of victims who died or suffered other catastrophic injuries as a result of being immunized. According to the National Vaccine Information Center, the current version of the bill does not allow vaccine exemptions for reasons of conscience or religion, only providing for medical exemptions to be certified by duly registered and licensed physicians. The bill would still need to pass committee hearings as well as House and Senate votes before it goes before President Obama, who would likely sign it according to past statements. The administration's failure thus far to respond to a White House petition signed by over 130,000 people seeking the prohibition of any laws mandating the force and requirement of vaccinations of any kind, which met the required signature threshold more than a month ago, is indeed telling. And they do have the H.R. 2232 Vaccinate All Children Act of 2015 up here at Infowars.com. So you can check it out. It's on Scrib. You can download it, share it, embed it. But it's all there. So you can read it for yourself. And maybe this would just make people more likely to homeschool. Like, screw this, we'll just homeschool. Because that's what we really should be doing. And we should stop paying them. You know, this is just crap. Putting your lives at risk. Would they work? She's either in on it or stupid. They're not to say that you can't have effective vaccines, but what they put on them and the dosages and the spacing of dosages is completely reckless. And the amount of vaccines that we have out is reckless. There's going to be side effects. There's going to be injury. When you have dangerous chemicals, it preserves, you know, that at that time becomes a choice. Forced medication is what the Nazis did. Okay. I got a 2-minute clip here And this is Vatican signs treaty, and it's from Next News Network.
The Palestinian people just received some good news, and anxious Christians may see this news as another sign of Christ's return. Pope Francis has confirmed a treaty recognizing the state of Palestine. This treaty is the first legal document negotiated between the Holy See and the Palestinian state and constitutes an official recognition. According to the ancient Hebrew scripture of Daniel 9:27 and modern Christian interpretation of it, the so-called Antichrist will confirm a covenant for 7 years. This would mark the beginning of the Great Tribulation, and then the rapture would follow. However, the Christian community remains divided on theories of the timing of the rapture. According to Christians, this could be a significant end-time event preceding the final judgment and the millennial reign of Christ in the flesh from the New Jerusalem. The official signing of the treaty is likely to take place this Saturday when Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas meets with Pope Francis prior to the canonization ceremonies of 2 new saints. Details are still very vague on the specifics of the treaty, and according to prophetic scholars, other significant events are required to occur prior to Christ's return, such as plagues, meteors, the rebuilding of the Jewish temple on the Temple Mount, and the War of Gog and Magog, a war some people believe that we are on the edge of right now. As more details on the treaty become available, we'll update you in the comment section, and, as always, if you have any updates that you discover, please post them in the comment section below. For the Next News Network, I'm Gary Franchi.
You know, that's the thing, you know, we will have some of the religious people believing that this is a sign of end times. I don't know if it is or it isn't. But I think that if Israel is going to call itself a Jewish state, then the Muslims should have their state where you kind of came to call your homeland and acquire through, you know, the United Nations. So it could just be a sign of goodwill and good posture, and also being a role model, saying, you know, this is how you talk to people. But, you know, I don't claim to be God, no God. You know, I have my own spirituality, and with God, you know, I don't claim to talk for him. So what comes out of this, we are sitting on this kind of brink. You know, we teeter with this this war. We have, you know, dealing with Russia, China, the Middle East. And a lot of it, you know, is our government's own doing, from its intervening. But we have so much going on that it almost seems like there's a catastrophe around every corner. We don't know what our economy's going to do, or, you know, how long it's going to stay propped up. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with us overseas. You know, Europe's not stable. You know, Middle East is not stable. America's coming apart at the seams. We have out of control police. We have a out of control federal government. And in return for a lot of this divide and conquer, where you have one side push the other, then you have the other side push back, and you have states enacting laws that just, they're basically pushback laws. They're pushing back against, whether it be the federal government or groups out there protesting. You get this back and forth because no one's talking about the most important thing. I will defend your freedom and your rights and not try to involve myself in your personal life, and you do the same, we can actually live a peaceful life. Instead, we're fighting over stuff that really is none of our business a lot of times. It's none of my damn business what our people are doing. I don't have control over what people do or what they call things, nor do I want it. What I don't want is groups of people running around forcing people to do things or stealing, robbing. And we have groups and we have government groups that do this. Asset forfeiture. You have a lot of different things that go on at all kinds of different levels. And we just egg it on. We don't work past it. Poor against the rich, white against black, black against white, Mexican against white, Asian against Mexican. It's all BS. Let people be judged by the fruits of their labor. A true free society, people prosper because they work to prosper. You don't have regulations preventing you from prospering while benefiting the people that have already prospered and creating monopolies. Individual capitalism is okay. Corporatist, crony capitalism, that's wrong. That's where the corporations are using government to pass laws to make it hard for you to prosper while benefiting them and basically leaving you in a position to become labor. Now, not all companies are like that. You might work for a local company. The owners make pretty decent money. They're not the ultra rich. They're making decent money, but they're not the ultra rich. And yeah, you kind of become, in a way, maybe, that type of labor force. But one, you do it voluntarily, and two, they're not the ones passing laws. They're usually the ones trying to, work within these rules that keep getting passed that make it hard for them to grow as a company, to compete with other companies. And the sad thing is, because we've allowed this corporatism to grow and exist, it kind of leaves them in a position where they almost have to do the same thing to ever get ahead. Now, I'm not a downer type person, because I do see the opportunity that still does exist you might not be able to be ultra rich, but really the ultra rich shouldn't be ultra rich. Because that's not true earned. That's usually thief. You get Buffett calling for taxes on the rich, and usually that's talking about 125,000 or 150,000 and up yearly. At the same time, he gets his tax exempt billions. So, these people constantly work against anybody coming up, and that's how they rob from you. So we really have to, it might sound good. Yeah, tax the rich. They're not talking about the ultra wealthy. The ultra wealthy will remain ultra wealthy while you trying to work your way up will get stopped. And this goes all the way back to Rockefeller and Standard Oil, and I've talked about this multiple times. But you look at Rockefeller, Standard Oil, got to end the monopoly, divide up Standard Oil into multiple companies. Rockefeller still owns majority share in most of those companies, if not all. And he prevents anybody from ever getting to that level. Then you take in consideration things like, go read the book Creature from Jekyll Island. And you see how that monopoly that he continued to have, basically, allowed him to further what he was wanting to accomplish. It's not really hard to understand what these elitists are doing and what they want to do. But you have to look. Well, check out the UCY store. Go to ucy.tv, click the UCY store tab, and UCY is partnered with Amazon. Great prepping gear, radiation gear, camping gear. Go check them out. Anti-Tyrannynews.com/MyPatriot. Find some non-genetically modified seeds from My Patriot Supply. Anti-Tyrannynews.com/MyPatriot. And stay tuned here on UCY.tv. We have the Continual Condition coming up next. And all the great other shows coming up after that. And, one thing we need to do is really support the alternative media, especially, platforms like UCY, because really we are the last place for the ability for truth and the idea of liberty and freedom to get out. And that's what I try to do. And I know UCY has given me a great platform to do that on, and all the other great hosts here on UCY.tv. Again, stay tuned and check out the UCY store and check out My Patriot Supply. And you can also go to antityrannynews.com and click on one of the My Patriot Supply banners. UCY store tab on UCY.tv. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll catch you this Friday. Take care.